As some of you may know, my academic education was a Master of Science degree in biophysics, which was a 5-year course. So I have a lot of interest in biology and biotech. Some of my client work involves bioscience projects and image analysis. So this was an interesting podcast for my personal interest. Basically, I'm interviewing a company, their founders. The company's called Brazen Bio, and it's basically a Y-Combinator for biosciences to allow biotech startups the finance and capital and facilities to create their test projects and a way that would give them opportunities that they wouldn't have normally. So hope you enjoy this show. We're quite scientific, but you can manage. Here we go. Hey Brent and Shawn, welcome to the Nikos Show. How you guys doing?
Can't complain. Thanks for having us.
Good to see you, Nikos.
How's life in California?
Warmer. Palm trees and sunshine still.
So you guys are basically making a Y Combinator for biotech startups. Can you just give us a little idea of what Y Combinator is and why specifically on biotech startups?
Yeah, so we're building Brazen Bio. It's more of a platform, and our motto is that we help biotech founders advance human health, and we're doing that through multiple programs. One of them happens to be a fellowship. We're calling the Brazen Fellowship, where we will incubate founders and their ideas to hopefully launch new startups. It is similar to Y-Combinator in that respect, but we're not a fund. We are a company. And we eventually will have our own fund, but for right now, we're a C Corp. And so, down the line, we'll also provide support through other programs, including events, as well as we hope to build some tools for founders to help them on their journey.
Legit. So what are your backgrounds?
Sure. So I'm Shawn Carbonell, MD, PhD. I was originally training to be an academic neurosurgeon. Along the way, I did a lot of research, fell in love with the process of research, obviously having gotten the PhD, and made a discovery on my way towards neurosurgery training, which derailed that entire career path. I decided to pivot from neurosurgery to biotech because I had an idea for a new brain cancer drug, and I thought I could help more people with that drug than I could with my own two hands. And so I took a risk and left the training program and founded my first biotech company, OncoSynergy, which is still around today, 10 years later. And I brought an idea to the lab bench and finally to patients this year in March, treated the first patient with brain cancer at Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa. And so I've lived the journey of bringing in my research, translating my research from the bench to bedside, and I want to basically help others do that through Brazen Bio.
Noble cause, my friend, cancers.
For sure.
Yes, so let me add a little color to this. Shawn and I got to know each other 20 years ago when we were in the University of Pennsylvania. He was training me, helping me set up a laboratory there in the neurosurgical department. The head, Shawn Grady, one of our mutual mentors. So we both come from an academic track, and I took the basic science route, did the PhD, postdoc, and then had a realization industry would be the right place for me to continue to be that scientist, and then doing it on the industry side. Actually, it was at that time about 10 years ago where Shawn was kicking off OncoSynergy. So in fact, I even considered joining him at that time. We were going back and forth around how to work together at that point. And I decided to stay in industry and big pharma, and then had built up a leadership career in Asia and Europe, and then came back to the States. So I've been on the other side of the industry than Shawn, and over on the big pharma corporate side, and then us coming together for this Brazen Bio venture.
So what are the biggest challenges for the people that you're trying to help, like startups in the biotech space?
Sure. So I've actually lived through it. And so there are many frictions being a biotech founder. Obviously, biotech is a lot different than tech. You can't just walk into a Starbucks for the free Wi-Fi with your laptop and build a product, unless you're independently wealthy, of course, and you're doing everything virtually. But so, biotech founders need infrastructure. They need laboratories, state-of-the-art equipment that is, millions of dollars, and they need sort of a critical mass of smart people around them to help. And so really the first Valley of Death is launch, putting all that together. I've lived this. So 10 years ago, I was basically building, we're basically building Brazen Bio to be the program, the resources I needed 10 years ago to start OncoSynergy. And from there, you have issues from IP to getting funding and navigating all the corporate and business end of the company, as well as developing your product. So we're helping at the earliest stages to hopefully bring more shots on goal, bring new technologies out from the labs and into the real world. We think there's so many diseases with unmet need, so many diseases where there's very few drugs or no drugs. And on the other hand, there are many scientists out there, many students out there who may have great ideas to address those diseases. And so we want to bring those two together.
So what's because there's universities, I remember from when I went to university, there was incubators within universities that would take new research papers and try and spin out companies. So what differentiates you between this kind of university ventures?
Sure, it's a great question. So there are three different categories of incubators currently. There's ones that are university-based or government-based, nonprofit-based, accelerator venture fund-based, and industry-based, of course. And so all of those, they basically fund in order to serve their own interests. We're unique in that we are not affiliated with industry, academia, or a government. And we are our own entity. And so that allows us to put founders first. That's our motto, founder friendly first. And so that there aren't any competing incentives, right? So we're all about making sure founders can succeed. And again, we believe there's massive unlocked value in scientists translating the research to patients through startups. So we're unique in that fact, as well as we bring to bear all the things you need in one place, in particular, our senior fellowship, which is our sort of council of advisors, several dozen people we've worked with in the past who are willing to consult pro bono to help our founders get their idea into the real world. So there's a lot of things there that we can expand on, but that's essentially the difference.
So what are your long-term aspirations for Brazen Bio?
So just to frame everything, our 10-year vision is to put everything under one roof and create what we're calling the Brazen Institute, which will be a vertically integrated organization where we can put everything under one roof from the initial sort of what we have now for the Brazen Fellowship, this incubator idea, combine that with an accelerator for later stage companies, and then also provide resources such as phase 1 scale manufacturing and regulatory help and clinical trial help. Again, all under one roof here in sunny Southern California, much like Y-Combinator does or used to do in the Bay Area. Everyone would have to move to Mountain View or the surrounding areas in order to start the companies through Y-Combinator. So we see the same thing happening for Brazen Bio. In 5 years, our goal is to help launch 100 companies.
So what kind of partners are you looking for in terms of industry? For example, I've got a biophysics degree. My first love was sort of biology and physics, and I want to sort of get back into that image analysis field. So I've learned a lot of skills in terms of the web. I'd like to potentially work with more and more startups in image analysis, but obviously there's going to be all sorts of other providers out there. So how would you connect them both? How do you go about that?
Brent's in charge of partnerships, so let him talk.
Yeah. So, Nikos, are you referring to the fellowship program to enroll in our incubator program?
Can you clarify what the fellowship is again?
Sure. So we're referring to our founders, our incoming founders, as our fellows, our fellowship. So they would be the originators of the idea, have that passion for the project they need to mature, and then we provide the resources for them to eventually incorporate and spin out through our incubator program. So in terms of the incoming founders, is this what you had in mind?
Yes. Yeah, so I was are you providing all of the the services that they need, or would you connect the fellowship with like other industry partners, like for example myself?
Absolutely. So it's a big reason why we're having these conversations now, as well as with yourself, to make the awareness, to make sure that the industry broadly knows Brazen Bio exists from the incoming founders side, as well as those partnerships. And what we found is that it's critical to get that awareness. We're a new company, a startup ourselves. So making the community more broadly aware of Brazen Bio, what we're doing, what's coming in our doors, and whether it's on the tech side, the biotech side, from the laboratory side, ultimately even hardware or commercialization, partnerships are appreciated at all levels, all aspects of the value chain. Introductions, opening doors, and collaboration is the best way to do this.
It sounds really interesting to me because I've got like 12 years of software experience and technology that I developed that I can, I could just talk to people there and see what they need, like whether it's like looking at genomic strings or image analysis. Like it would be nice to get back into the industry because I've spent a lot of time in finance and just retail, but my first love is in science,
Of course. And just getting more granular. So all of that is important. And of course, connecting people is one of the things that we will offer. But, we're focused primarily at Brazen Bio on diagnostics and therapeutics. So RxDX. We're also interested generally in anything that could impact patient health and wellness, of course. So, initially what we're providing is laboratory facilities and, of course, a computer and sort of the overhead aspects. And so people need to only pack a bag and they can get ready to go and do their work. Subsequent to that, of course, we'll match our fellows with our senior fellows, our experts, our consultants, pro bono consultants, council of advisors, to help them on their further journey. And our program is 12 weeks long, but once you're a Brazen Fellow, you're always a Brazen Fellow, and we will try to help you along the way.
Mm. So you also, Shawn, you mentioned about this cancer therapies for the brain. I'm quite interested in that technology because, this cancer is so awful and it affects everybody knows somebody who's been affected by it. So can you just let me know what your product is and what your maybe thoughts are on like future cancer therapies involving things like, for example, mRNA?
Interesting. So I've been interested ever since I was an undergraduate in brain cancer. And that's because I started going to neurosurgical grand rounds in the hospital and seeing all these patients. And that back then, this was the mid 90s, right? So putting a little age on me. So this is the mid 90s. There were no approved therapies for brain cancer, glioblastoma. And I am wearing my nonprofit t-shirt today, Cure Glioblastoma. And tomorrow is actually Glioblastoma Awareness Day in the United States. But in any case, so I became obsessed with this idea of creating a new drug for brain cancer. And so that became my mission. And I thought that would initially be through neurosurgery, but of course, neurosurgery can only go so far. You can cut it out, but it always comes back. And so again, I made the decision to develop this drug, and it's actually the first clinical stage inhibitor of CD29, which is a really critical driver of malignant progression and growth and drug resistance. And so it had a lot of. No one thought you could target this molecule safely, and we were the first to show it in primates, and now it's in humans. And so that's very gratifying. And so obviously it's just in early stage clinical trials at this time. So putting that aside, I think cancer obviously is a massive opportunity. I think ever since checkpoint inhibitors a decade ago sort of blew open the field, and now in the hospital these days it's an immunotherapy versus everything else type of world. But obviously, immunotherapies don't cure all cancers. They do very well in melanoma, for instance. But of course, that's only about 15-20% of the patients. And so there's a lot of room to grow there. And I think the biggest potential is in combining the immunotherapies with other types of therapies, including my potential therapy is the drug candidate called OS2966. And we've done some studies on that, and that's actually what my nonprofit is working on. But yeah, so I see a huge potential for cancer therapy based on the success we've seen with immunotherapy so far. Of course, James Allison winning the Nobel Prize for his work on the checkpoint inhibitors.
Was that a colleague of yours?
No, he's a very famous cancer biologist from Texas, but I've never met him.
So your drug OT22, whatever it is, that targets a molecule produced by cancerous cells in the brain.
Yeah, it actually targets a molecule that's overexpressed in pretty much all solid tumors. But of course, I focus my studies on the brain. Now, we've also done studies in breast cancer, ovarian cancer. We're currently doing studies in leukemias, and I'm probably missing a couple. But the potential is broad. But of course, I started with the tumor that I wanted to sort of address, which is glioblastoma.
So, given tumors could be, I don't know, thousands to millions of cells deep, how do you get your drug to each level of depth in that tumor?
That's a great question. A lot of people don't really understand that. And even I didn't when I started the company. I thought we could just stick a cannula into the CSF and infuse it, and then it basically distribute throughout the brain. What we understand now is that doesn't happen at all. Even if you to inject physically with a syringe, basically most of it would just reflux back out. So we're using a technique called convection enhanced delivery, which is basically really slow infusion with a catheter. So we're literally sticking a catheter into the middle of the tumor and slowly under pressure, just to overcome the interstitial pressure in the brain itself, slowly infusing the tumor. The drug is also interspersed with gadolinium, which is obviously the contrast agent. And so you can actually take MRIs while you're infusing, and you can see exactly where your drug is going. Or at least you can see where the contrast is going, so that you can see that you've fully covered the tumor. And so that's how we've decided to address it. Other people are looking at crossing the blood-brain barrier, but then you still have the issue of distribution, even if it gets past the blood-brain barrier, because people have shown that macromolecules don't really diffuse freely in the brain, particularly antibodies. So we think this is the most direct way of doing it. It's invasive, but it's a well-established technique that's been around for decades.
So when you're visualizing the distribution of a drug, is it being distributed through blood vessels and capillaries and then by osmosis, or is there some kind of that plus some kind of process to take the drug into the cell, or does this process happen outside of the cell?
Oh, it's all out. It's all. So the target of the drug is extracellular. So yeah, it's all extracellular. When you're pushing fluid into the brain, obviously it'll go in regions with the least resistance. So you'll see it first track along vessels, and then eventually throughout the other interstitium. But conveniently, the glioblastoma, that's not something we designed.
So I missed the last 15 seconds because of my internet. Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah. So the when you inject a drug into the brain or any tissue, it'll go along the path of the least resistance, which can be along blood vessels. And so, and that's actually advantageous because a lot of the most important glioblastoma cells, the most malignant, tend to be right along the blood vessels. And again, that's not something we've designed. That's obviously just a characteristic of the biophysics of tumors.
Mm-hmm. Cool. So Brent, can you let me know a little bit about the reception your company's had, or is that too private right now? I'm not sure where we are on that.
Absolutely. So I would love to come back around to your questions around therapy also, because I have some input to that. Then with regards to the reception, it's been fantastic to see the amount of support, in particular on the professional platforms like LinkedIn, through various channels of colleagues we've worked with, podcasts like yourself, Nikos, the reception in terms of our launch ourselves as Brazen Bio. A lot of colleagues around the globe really pleased to see what we're doing. And we have put out a couple polls, in fact, also to understand where some of the friction may be with regards to biotech entrepreneurship and startups. And it's really overwhelming. It's not a lack of good ideas as a gap. It's not necessarily regulation either. It is in fact resources, access to resources for these biotech founders in terms of infrastructure, as well as guidance and mentorship in particular, which a follow-up poll has revealed the access to subject matter experts in the form of what we're building with Brazen Bio, the Senior Fellowship. So all these industry veterans we've worked with for years, whether they're from academia or industry or various aspects of the industry, this has really been a grassroots or attempt to build the ecosystem and consolidate around these biotech founders. We're here to help.
Good stuff. So Shawn, by what you wanted to talk about therapeutics as well, Brent?
Yes, just a little double click on your question there with regards to cancer therapy, in particular mRNA. So these vaccines presently we're all familiar with in the forms of mRNA. And I've mentioned this previously, and it is important to draw a reference from. This technology were originally discovered and developed for cancer vaccines. So these vaccines were in the pipeline prior to the pandemic. And then the pivot towards the viral infection was obviously necessary. What I'm getting at is these technology are unclear exactly what application they will be applied to, although coming back around to cancers, specifically mRNA, I would imagine being used in a form of cancer vaccine or a personalized vaccine for patients in time.
Mm-hmm. So this mRNA vaccines, they're making spike proteins, and so do these spike proteins go into the bloodstream, or like are they sort of does the immune system tackle them in the bloodstream before, where they end up some random place around the body? I mean, I don't really know. I've not seen any images of how the spike proteins get distributed.
I'm not aware of the details of that, other than my understanding that it's a tethered spike protein, and so I assume it would stay local, and the immune cells will come in and take it to the local lymph nodes. But I'm not familiar with any of the distribution data.
Mm-hmm. So, in terms of cancer cells, are there enough sort of distinguishing features between them and ordinary cells that you think that cancer could be cured?
Yes, and that's the power of immunotherapy, of course. The thing about targeted therapy, which in the past decade was sort of the thing. The thing about that is obviously you're only targeting one molecule that may be on 90% of the tumor cells, but as soon as you treat it, studies have shown even within minutes, the tumor is already adapting, and so that should show you that these cells are highly adaptable, and they don't even need to necessarily mutate. They have the ability to adapt because they have the same drive that any of our cells have, which is to survive, and they will use those in order to do so. So the beauty about the immune system is you don't even necessarily need to know the targets. The immune system will take care of that. It's basically the body's own drug manufacturing facility, and it's completely adaptable, just like the tumors. Now, the problem is, of course, tumors are smart, and they put up these signals to disguise themselves to make them look not like cancer, so that the immune system can't detect them. And that's basically the heart of immunotherapy, and at least for checkpoint inhibitors. And there's many other molecules along that line, and people are definitely pulling on that thread. So it's just a matter of basically uncloaking the tumor cells and getting enough traction so that the immune system can start to recognize these cells and get a foothold.
Mhm.
I think we're getting there. We need to combine, again, I think we need to combine conventional techniques along with immunotherapy in order to get there. But I think we're very close.
I'm shocked to hear that you said that cancer cells are like almost like self-aware in a sense of just what they can do. And the thing is, with cancer cells, they don't behave like viruses and bacteria in that they're, in a sense, their aim is to kill the host. So they, in a sense, are killing themselves. So it'd be nice if you could trick the cancers to sort of self-preserve themselves so they don't kill the host, and they just sort of like a cyst or something that just sits there and doesn't do anything. But I mean, they're suicidal and they're selfish, the cancers, you know.
Yeah, so there's lots of people trying to attempt that, and that's the sort of the differentiation approach. And so obviously that hasn't really been successful. I don't know that anything has been brought to the clinic to do that, but at least in the laboratories, that's something that people have been looking at for some time. But I think I agree. Anything, if you can turn cancer into a chronic issue rather than an acute issue, then that would be beautiful.
The thing is, cell biology, it's not something you can like imagine in your head what's going on, because in a sense, have you ever seen like people that have not seen cells under an electron microscope? It makes Manhattan look like a simple piece of diagram. The absolute unbelievable complexity and the amount of different processes happening at once. It's like we're trying to make fixes for problems in that system, you know. So like a web developer or a programmer, he can sort of debug each line of code step by step to figure out what the problem is. But with like biology, you've got so many variables happening at once, and we can't like debug the cells step by step to figure out what's going on. Maybe we can model stuff better in the future, but you know, who knows really?
No, that's the thing. Sorry, go ahead, Brent.
Yeah, this is exactly what we're also focused on here with Brazen Bio in terms of the diagnostic space. So this is early detection, Nikos. This is going all the way upstream to when disease is manifest before it presents symptoms, to catch it very early on for treatment or, in fact, prevention. So understanding those analogies of the bug that you had alluded to in the software side, on the human side, understanding where some biomarker may be off prior to the clinical manifestation or the symptoms appearing. This is really important for long-term human health.
In a sense, we'll be able to do more as, you know, have supercomputers, quantum computers. There's more potential for good in a sense, but there's also the elephant in the room potential for bioterrorism. Is, I mean, for me, viruses are more scary than of course, like almost like nuclear weapons, because you've seen how much this virus affected the world. And you know, it's like we are all like operating systems that can produce viruses, and you know, like machines for spreading, you know, potential new viruses. So I just wonder how we manage to protect, like, as biotech becomes more democratic and democratized, how we protect humanity from bioterrorists, you know. Hard question.
That's that's an advanced question. It's a very difficult one. Yeah.
I just dumped that on you guys there.
This comes down to education, and it's a big part of what needs to be more clear to people who are outside the field, outside of this specific industry, those who are lacking the jargon or the terminology understanding of what's being communicated. Shawn has done an outstanding job in various channels of communicating science and making it fascinating and interesting for people to understand. And I believe this is addressed like other forms of terrorism or behavior, which is counterproductive to society. It comes down ultimately to education.
Yeah, I almost depressed myself by asking that question. You know, like it's.
I mean, so if you open the floodgates, you let in the good and the bad. So it's just a matter of, you know, obviously we manage the downside as things come, but hopefully you don't let that limit your upside.
Elon Musk is saying the same thing as well about, you know, AI, that there's always the potential for good, but he's also worried about AI becoming the destruction of us all. The thing is with AI, it's much more accelerated than anything biological because things happen at the speed of light, whereas cellular processes happen at the speed of flows of liquids and that kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, the singularity. But I think the immunological singularity is also in hand for cancer because again, so just to get back to some of the points that you're saying, the body and biology will always be smarter than scientists, right? So scientists trying to identify, even if they have computers, it's garbage in, garbage out, right? But the immune system is the only thing that can actually be on the ground as a ground troop, see what's going on, adapt in real time, and then produce whatever effect, either produce antibodies or recruit other cells. And so that's why I see the immune system as being the future for not only cancer, but for many other diseases, because a lot of it is rooted in inflammation.
Yeah, the more information we have, the more we can protect ourselves. Cool. So anything else you want to add before we finish our first episode?
Applications are open for the Brazen Fellowship that is starting later this summer in Los Angeles. This is not limited to people in Los Angeles. We pay for travel. It is limited to folks who can work and live in the US legally, of course. At least this first batch. This is our alpha batch. We're learning as along with everyone else. But we're really excited. We already got some very, very cool technologies, some very cool applications in, and we're still taking more. So get them in.
Yeah, it'd be nice to swing by there at some point. I've got a plan to visit California once some travel restrictions get a bit easier. So I might jump by for a coffee at some point.
Absolutely, come visit us. Don't bring any variants, but just kidding.
Yeah, I was in Ukraine for a bit there, and everyone was talking about the British variant, and every time they said it, I felt bad for being there. It's British variant. I'm not in the British UK much now, but it was interesting to hear that. Yeah, I'm glad they've got rid of those country names for the variants. Like the Indian variant and all this stuff.
Yeah, and all the letters and numbers. Yeah, alpha beta is better.
How do people get in touch with you guys?
Yes, so we're on all channels as Brazen Bio, at Brazen Bio, or also a website, brazen.bio or brazenbio.com.
Cool. Well, you've certainly piqued my interest back to dig up my biophysics chops, and I'll see what I can come up with. But thanks for your time, Brent and Shawn. It's been fun to have you on the show.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Nikos.
Cool. Yep, and thanks for everyone who's watched. Hopefully you're more interested in biology, and we'll see you around soon again on the Nikos Show. See you all later. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Thanks for listening to the Nikos Show. I trust you enjoyed its content and were transported on an adventure. If you are a world-class expert in your field, or you know one, please get in touch. I'm also looking for long-term partners to sponsor the show. Please share with your friends if you like this episode, and please leave a rating and leave a review if you haven't done already. See you again soon. Nikos out. Bye-bye.